Welcome back. Lawyers representing News 24 journalist Karyn Maughan and arms deal lead prosecutor advocate Billy Downer will this morning seek to have the summons issued against them by former President Jacob Zuma dismissed. Zuma instituted a private prosecution against the pair, accusing them of leaking his medical records, unlawfully. Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngcobo is in Pietermaritzburg for us, ahead of that matter being heard this morning. So, Ziyanda, there are two court applications relating to the former president's private prosecution of Billy Downer and Karyn Maughan that are continuing on this Monday morning.
That's right, Michelle, and both will be heard this morning as the merits of both of these matters are similar. So there are three things, for an example, that Karyn Maughan's lawyers will be seeking today. One, to have those summons dismissed, as you've already mentioned, but also to have an order to restrain former President Jacob Zuma for instituting any further action in relation to this private prosecution. And thirdly, to have him, this matter dismissed with costs, a punitive measure taken against him for what they've described as an abuse of the private prosecution process. So the burden of responsibility then, as the heads of argument of, Karyn Maughan's lawyers say, is that the former president needs to prove that in fact he does have that nolli prosequi certificate, which is the certificate of non-prosecution issued then by the, the director, I should say, of public prosecutions here in KwaZulu-Natal. That would be Miss Elaine Zungu, and that is of contestation that, the former president firstly does not have such a certificate of prosecution for both Karyn Maughan and Billy Downer, and the meaning thereof and the extension of this meaning is under contention. We also heard a similar argument being made by President Cyril Ramaphosa, you'll recall, in January, Michelle, where this issue of, a nolli prosequi certificate became, and the title not to prosecute, which is what Zuma's lawyers will be arguing, is what is the bone of contention as per the Criminal Procedures Act.
It all relates to his medical records, right, Ziyanda, and his imprisonment at the time at the Escort Correctional Facility. It's ironic that there are several parallels to be drawn from the former president's imprisonment, the riots that unfolded in parts of KwaZulu-Natal back in 2021, and today's national shutdown.
Absolutely, Michelle, and you'll recall that what the former president is accusing Karyn Maughan of, you'll recall that the former president in the arms deal trial was seeking a postponement of the start of the trial, citing then his ill health. You'll recall that he had an examination done by the military health services, and they, had basically said that, his health is fine. He's just suffered, a severe trauma injury of sort, but it wasn't, specific in the nature of the illness of the former president. So Karyn Maughan reporting then that the former president, on the former president's medical certificate at the time, and you'll know that Billy Downer is the lead when it comes to the arms deal trial, and there have been several attempts to remove him by Zuma's lawyers from this trial. They've cited his, personal bias and political agenda that he's trying to achieve. And when you think of all of that against the backdrop of the former president's, imprisonment last year and the riots that took place as a result of him being arrested, coupled with opportunism of criminal elements, which has largely been the fears of the authorities as they've ramped up their visibility in all parts of the province, including outside this High Court here in Pietermaritzburg, where you can see several SAPS vehicles stationed in and around this court precinct. Or yes, ordinarily you'd see the same for when the former president comes to court, which we're anticipating he'll be here as the prosecutor in this matter, but you can see that there's a lot of securitization in and around Pietermaritzburg. So it's a very interesting parallel that today, as the EFF lead that national shutdown, that there's somewhat of a parallel that can be drawn when we look at, the way in which the state has responded then to those calls.
So we'll know by Wednesday, Ziyanda, whether the former president can indeed go ahead with his private prosecution.
Absolutely. That's not, unless, Michelle, there's a separate application, that's brought, I'm just thinking about the fact that, in the arms deal trial, someone like Judge Bitgun has recused himself as a result of what he believed to be a conflict of interest when it comes to him having made some kind of a comment on, private prosecutions when he was handing down his judgment in the permanent stay of prosecution. So if there's another possibility of a fresh application brought by former President Jacob Zuma's lawyers, if they don't bring a fresh application, I should say, then yes, by Wednesday, because this matter is set down for today and Wednesday, where a full bench is expected to hear then why that summons issued by former President Jacob Zuma needs to be dismissed, then we'll know whether or not this private prosecution will go ahead. Remembering as well, Michelle, that the private prosecution against President Cyril Ramaphosa was also expected to get underway in May. So if this is dismissed, then we're likely to see the whole process, halted completely.
Well, Bolatos there in the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Thanks very much indeed. All right, let's take you